Marty, trust the
Yep.
plan. Don't rock the boat.
Don't rock the boat.
Don't rock the boat. You
Um,
gotta. You just. We can't criticize our guy because if we do, he won't get elected, and then everything's upset. It's us. We'll be the fault
it's
if it doesn't work out.
people do weird mental gymnastics that way. Like somebody asked me that the other day. Like, can you use your clout to, I'm like, okay, well, that's great. I appreciate the vote of confidence. Apparently, I have clout. Can you use your clout to get Pierre elected? I'm like, no, 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 no. I use my clout to show you what Pierre is promising versus what Carney's promising versus what others are promising, and then you make your decision. I'm not going to choose for you. I'm gonna and so don't get mad at me if once in a while I highlight something that of your favorite candidate that you don't like, because that's who
Well,
I am. I'm not, and that's who you are, Clyde, right?
absolutely. And the question comes out: at what point do you pull out the pom poms and give up all sense of your principles and all these other things? Like, no candidate is going to be 100% on board with everything that you stand for. So at some point, you're going to disagree with them. Should you ignore that and just have the pom poms out and go rah 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 and hope that they get in? And not only that, hope that because you never brought it up, that you'll be able to bring it up after they've come to power, as if they won't ignore you then, right?
Well, that's actually that's a common strategy that I'm hearing from people right now. We just need to get a candidate in. Actually, let's not beat around the bush, right? So we're heading into an election, and people are very happy with Pierre, or very fed up with the Liberals, and they want to change. They want Pierre to come in. For the majority of the last year, Pierre was leading very strongly in the polls, and now he's falling behind a little bit, and people are getting nervous. They're worried that Pierre might not get elected, and consequently, anybody who criticizes Pierre at this point gets attacked, because I've been attacked hard by people who are like, you're jeopardizing the conservatives. I'm like, I'm a guy on the internet, man, with 100,000 followers. If Pierre loses this election, folks, it ain't because of me. That I'm pretty sure of that. Like, it's going
Well,
to
and
be
it's
for other reasons.
and it's his to lose. I mean, absolutely. Like, he's got the popularity right now. The Liberals, even though they're having a bit of a surge here, and we were talking about this just before the stream. Like, this seems like a genuine surge, but it seems like a genuine surge like we saw with Kamala Harris. Like,
Yes.
Kamala Harris, her genuine surge was people being invigorated to answer the phone, essentially, at the end of the day, not necessarily get to the polls, like the voting booth, but just to answer the phone and be like, yeah, I like that person. I think they call it a normalcy bias. I think is that what they call it, when conservatives are going to answer the phone just as they normally do, or what we've seen in recent years, where the Trump phenomena in the United States was conservatives were just not ignoring pollsters and actually telling them off and hanging up the phone. And it created an interesting dynamic in the polling, because it skewed the polls towards the Democrats. And the
Yeah.
Democrats definitely lost the last election. I mean, it's no contest. It was a landslide towards Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the polls right now, what's happening is, because we're so, we're in an election campaign, more or less. So polling companies are being hired by political parties, by media, by companies, whatever. There are polls coming out pretty much every 2-3 days right now. Like, it's a lot, right? And like it or not, there is a trend, right? So the conservatives had, like, call it a 30-point lead over the Liberals. That lead has dwindled in the last couple of weeks, in the last 4 weeks. And some people just want to say, no, suddenly some people want to say, oh, the polls are all wrong, it's all propaganda, blah blah blah. I don't think so. I think, the polls are legit. I'm more interested in trying to figure out why, and is it something that'll be sustained. And like you said, I think the polls are legit. I think it is a bit of the flavor of the month. Everybody's getting called right now. Let's face it, right? The Liberals are getting a lot of news attention. If somebody picks up the phone because they're being polled, they might say, yeah, I'm voting for the Liberals again. Will that popularity stay? I doubt it. I doubt it. I mean, right now, it's one-sided. Parliament is sitting. There's no question period. We can't. The parties can't really question each other. It's pretty one-sided. I mean, if you're an alien landing in this country and you turn on a television, you'd think that the Liberals were in full power and dominating everything, because the media in this country is bought by the Liberals. That I would say. So the polls are probably independent. The media is not. The mainstream
no,
media
they're absolutely not.
Yeah.
And they're showing a different story from what's actually happening realistically, and they're not telling the whole story even. I mean, they have Mark Carney, who's going to come in. He's the installed new dictator of the Liberal Party for all intents and purposes. I mean, it's a sham. There's no real election. He's being installed as their leader, and he's coming in and he's basically just taking the Conservatives platform and he's running with that, because he's a new face for a lot of people. A lot of people don't see him as the same as Justin Trudeau. They didn't like Justin Trudeau. People were expressing to their Liberal MPs, especially on the East Coast, that, sorry, I won't vote for you as long as Justin Trudeau is the leader. They've done what they need to do, and they've got a new leader. And now he's saying all the same stuff that you hear from Pierre Poilievre. Listen right here.
Tariff challenges with the United States. Now, we have a plan to get that done. And core to that plan, the first big step in that plan, is to make sure that government works for all Canadians. And that's why today I'm announcing a new approach to how we manage the budget, how we manage government spending. And the essence of this is to spend less and invest more. That means reining in government spending so that Canada can invest more as a country.
Right. This is the guy he's the guy behind Justin Trudeau this whole time, and he's now talking about, we're going to rein in spending. This is our idea. This is what Pierre's been saying. He's stealing the thunder is what he's doing.
Again, I wish I could be in the room with those guys and really ask them questions when they're speaking, right? I mean, like this week, well, actually, like Carney for the last 4 weeks now has been flip-flopping so much. I mean, I don't even know where he stands anymore, right? Like, he goes to BC and he says, oh yeah, we're going to build pipelines. And then he heads over to Quebec, and in French he says, no, we're not building pipelines. I didn't see that speech. We're gonna spend less. Like, just a week ago, he was bragging to everybody that he saved the world in 2008, especially here in Canada, because he turned on the printing machine and we printed our way out of the recession or whatever. So he constantly
never stopped, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, he never stopped. He's constantly contradicting himself, and nobody asks him questions anymore. Like, no, the media just record what he says and then publish it.
That's it.
Like,
yeah,
that's it. Yeah. I mean, the other thing he said this week, there's a clip. I don't know if you have it queued up, but he said, the carbon tax not working, and I want to change the carbon tax and
change it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, and again, for 8 years, we had Liberals. Remember all those times the Liberals would say, whatever, 4 out of 5 economists say that the best way to lower emissions is a carbon tax. Like they'd have their talking points. I'm like, so now what are you saying now, Mark, that the 4 out of 5 economists were wrong? Your predecessor was wrong. Stephen Guilbeault was wrong. Everybody's wrong.
He was wrong. Yeah.
He was wrong.
Yeah.
No.
And yeah, so that's where we're at with Carney, but with Pierre Poilievre. So getting back to this whole idea of not being able to criticize Pierre Poilievre, he did his what would you call that? The speech on Flag Day. It was the big rah. Everybody get.
It was his big rally. He had a big rally.
Yeah.
And he had a big rally.
Huge turnout, by the way, and the media didn't give any credit to the turnout for that rally. It was massive. There was an overflow area that was packed with people. Now, for the whole rally, I was really actually excited about all the things he was saying. It's just much of a reiteration of all the things that he'd said previous. But then when he got onto the United States thing and talking about these tariffs with Trump and this trade war that, for all intents and purposes, at the beginning was all just about fixing the border. That's all that was. And then it turned into another thing because of the behavior of the Canadians, in my estimate. But he jumped on and he just basically had the same opinion as everyone else in the lineup. It didn't have a nuanced approach. He has said these things before. Canada's not strong. Canada's in a weak position. It's because of the Liberals. We're weak economically. We're weak militarily. We're weak culturally. There's so many things we're weak on, and it's because of the Liberal government. It's because of 10 years of the Liberal government. He could have brought that to the platform, but what did he do? He did the I'm gonna give you sweet little lies and make you feel good. Canada's strong. Canada's this. America only budges. You give some quote from I can't remember who it was. Some quote that was a dig at the Americans, just period. And it went along, and it kind of irked me because I was getting a little fed up with this like booing of the national anthem when and not to mention that it was a veteran singing the anthem when that happened. A lot of Americans were kind of put off. Let's just be honest. A lot of Americans were very put off by this. And the reality is Canada's had a pretty sweet deal for a long time. And America's like, why are we going to give you a sweet deal? Like, we like you. We like you. We want to help you. We want you to be good, but you're not being good. And then now you're being dicks about it. And that's really what it was. And America's like, well, screw it then. We're gonna go hard at you now. And the response was to this faux tough guy thing. I was not into it. And I expressed myself about it, and people were pissed at me for even suggesting.
I got the same reaction, Clyde. I mean, my view is that in the last 10 years, the Liberals pulled us way to the left, right? The Liberals themselves raced to the left. And now they got a guy like Carney, who people say Carney is stealing conservative ideas. I'm like, they're down in the middle right now. Both parties are down the middle, that it's hard to say. I'm like, you can say that the conservatives or that the Liberals are stealing conservative ideas. The reason they're able to do that is because the conservatives themselves have moved so close to the center. So for me, it's indistinguishable who's stealing whose ideas. So after that speech, that's what I said after that speech. I would love the conservatives to go back to the right. Go look at the example that happened in the US. Look at Trump. Look at the reception he got when he went to the World Economic Forum. He didn't go there, but when he spoke at the WEF 2 weeks ago, like, people have an appetite for the right. So what's the right? It's smaller government, smaller spending, controlling our border. And if we let the Liberals take that narrative, if it's a battle down the middle, I'm afraid that Pierre will not win a battle down the middle, because if it's down the middle with two parties that are virtually identical, then people will start to play the resume card, and they'll say, look at Carney's resume versus Pierre's resume. And I'm sorry, folks, but on a resume basis, even though I think Carney's resume is garbage, people will look at it and go, he looks good, man. He worked for the World Bank. He was a banker, blah, 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 blah. So
not to mention the news apparatus like CBC and all of these outlets they're gonna kowtow for Carney, and they're gonna poo-poo Pierre. And this whole Trump derangement syndrome thing is off the charts. And all of the comparing of Pierre to Trump. That's their strategy, right?
Yeah, and so we should help compare him in a positive way, because I got shit for telling people I wish the conservatives would go back towards the right. That's all I'm asking them to do. And then people come back and say, well, you're not a strategist. I'm like, I'm not a strategist. I get that. But I'm looking at evidence right now, like the polling information, and we're talking to people online, and I can, and then people, and then I say, okay, I'm not a strategist. Which strategists are you guys using? The same ones that lost in 2021, 2019, and 2015? Because if you're using those strategists, the conservatives have lost 3 in a row. I don't want them to lose 4 in a row is what I'm trying to do. So please, folks, Don't give us shit for being out there and offering suggestions and highlighting things that are happening. Like that's what, if you want me to be quiet, then you're doing what I hate. You're trying to quiet me. You're censoring me, and don't do that. I don't like that. So
yeah, I don't like that either. So here's the result of every single person in the position of authority in Canada having the same opinion. Dollar for dollar tariffs. This is the across the board, dollar for dollar. We're tough guys. We're gonna take on the giant economy of the United States of America. Ludicrous. I mean, from our position, from anyone who has a real grasp of how large our economy is and what they can do to us, it's not smart in the position that we're in. Now, Donald Trump has a new strategy altogether. He's tweeted this out. I think you're unaware of this one. This is Donald Trump's new strategy. He came out with this the other day, and he said, on trade, I've decided for purpose of fairness that I will charge a reciprocal tariff, meaning whatever country charges the United States of America, we will charge them no more, no less. For the purposes of the United States policy, we will consider countries that use the VAT system, so value-added tax system, which is far more punitive than a tariff, to be similar to that of a tariff. I think he's referring to some of the European states and the trade that they have with them. Sending merchandise, product, or any other name through our country or another country for the purposes of unfairly harming America will not be accepted. In addition, we will make provisions for subsidies provided by countries in order to take economic advantage of the United States. Likewise, provisions will be made for the non-monetary tariffs and trade barriers that some countries charge in order to keep our products out of the domain, or if they do not even let the U.S. do business or let their businesses operate. We are able to accurately determine the cost of these non-monetary trade barriers. It is fair to all. No other country can complain. And in some cases, if a country feels that the United States would be getting too high a tariff, all they have to do is reduce or terminate their tariff against us. There are no tariffs. There are no tariffs if you manufacture or build your product in the United States. For many years, the U.S. has been treated unfairly by other countries, both friend and foe. The system will immediately bring fairness and prosperity back to the previously complex and unfair system of trade. America has helped many countries throughout the years at great financial cost. It is now time that these countries remember this and treat us fairly. A level playing field for American workers. I have instructed my Secretary of State, Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of the Treasury, and United States Trade Representative to do the work necessary to deliver reciprocity to our system of trade. So this is an interesting one, because if you look at Canada, these are the numbers that you see. We're seeing high tariff numbers. And even when it came to like steel and aluminum, he was saying 25% on steel and aluminum. That's now gone up. Now he's bumping it up because Canada has higher tariffs. And this is an interesting play, because what he's doing is he's actually showcasing the tariffs that other people have on the United States and making them reflect on this. And this is why I think the media went totally quiet about this.
Yeah, he definitely didn't write that tweet. That's like he handed his phone to somebody else and wrote that. Again, I'm not gonna question Trump. My very narrow opinion is that I think he's making a mistake, and because if he's doing this for clout, and I think he's doing this for part of a bigger negotiation. I hope that that's what it is, because if he's purely doing this for the economy and to try and lower the taxes of his citizens and replace them with tariffs and stuff like that, I think it's going to backfire on him. But time will tell. So I would say let him do that. I mean, there is one interesting comment in there when he says, that people have been abusing the U.S. Again, you're the largest. He's the largest economy by an order of magnitude above everybody else. So it's like it's a it's a pretty hard claim to justify. I mean, who's more likely to have abused others? The like, who's abused of the U.S.? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like, wow,
China.
you're like,
China.
China, sure, China.
Yeah.
But I mean, come on, like Donald, he said that, like we've abused them. We might not have. Maybe we've taken advantage of you.
Well,
included
in that statement would be the fact that China is. There are many companies that are not allowed to operate within China and sell their products to the Chinese market, and this would be a reciprocal thing. You manufacture things, you bring that manufacturing to the United States, or we have reciprocal trade barriers. If you're not allowing our companies to operate there and sell to your demographics, you can't sell your products here. End of story. And that's big.
Yeah, there's two outcomes. Either everybody becomes protectionists and they protect their own economies and we kind of stop trading with each other, or all barriers are gone and all tariffs are gone, and then it becomes a super wide open market. I don't know which way it's going to go, right? It depends. Like, I mean, I look at us, Canada. Yeah. I look at Canada. Our gut reaction right now, our politicians seem to be going, we're going to go tit for tat and we're going to protect ourselves and shut down. I'm like, that's
not good.
I guess what's missing in some of Donald's tweets is maybe a preamble, because he I always get the sense that he's doing it for his own people, which is noble. But if he had a broader intent and wants to bring make a worldwide free trade zone, then okay, then put it out there. Like, don't do it, Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, that's a
good point.
I think we got our heads in the sand. We still do. I still think we have our heads in the sand.
Well, the thing is, so I did a video about this the other day, and then I started getting flooded with many more comments. Not only that, I had people coming to me to provide more information on how our tariffs work, and this is something that I wasn't aware of. So I heard about. I've heard about quotas and systems and all this other stuff, but I didn't quite understand how it actually works in Canada. So the tariffs on butter and milk and cheese and eggs, for example, those tariffs, those are on products above a certain amount. They have a quota. Well, and then your first question would be, well, how do you get into the quota? How do you get a quota? And it turns out it's lobby groups that get these quotas, and the lobby groups now have this permanent fixture because they've been able to build monopolies around these quotas that are just handed to them by cronies in government. It's cronyism. It's crazy. And what are they using? They're using American cheaper products to establish monopolies in Canada, and then they're punitively basically punishing every other market player to benefit their cronies with like higher prices with these tariffs. It's unbelievable. And Canadians just sit there and take it. And that's the sad part. And I really want to push this and make people aware of this. Did you know that these quotas they're bought and sold? Like they're like these monopolies, and then
they're like taxi licenses. They're sold. Absolutely. I saw a chart the other day that showed the price of a liter of milk across the provinces, and I was shocked. Quebecers and Ontarians pay more for a liter of milk than we do in Alberta, and they have all the milk.
They have it all.
We barely have any milk here. We raise cattle for beef, but we still have a little bit of milk. They pay they're literally they shoot themselves in the foot like this all the time. They do these weird mental gymnastics, and they've been brainwashed into accepting a certain way. I mean, they're in their minds, they'll say, well, it's worth it collectively. So what if I pay more for milk? Bob gets to run his family farm. I'm like, that sounds noble, but Bob's actually running his family farm and abusing the shit out of you guys is what he's doing. Like, he's like, the cartels are taking advantage of your good side. Like, it's no longer noble. It's no longer noble, right? Like, it's there's no good cause in there. Oh, it's for a good cause that keeps a few farms employed or whatever. No,
it's all at the sake of getting a product that we could just get for cheaper anyway, and then go about going into another business. That's really what it comes down to. So, and this is one of the things that I want to push back on people that complain about subsidies. So if another country subsidizes a product and you say that's unfair, it's going to harm our businesses. Well, if the businesses shouldn't be there anyway, let them compete in the market. It's kind of like the story of the sugarcane farmers in Louisiana 100 years ago that didn't need the tariffs. They ended up not doing it anyway after a year, after so long, but the tariffs still exist. Now, if another country decides they want to subsidize a product, their taxpayers are paying us to consume the product. We shouldn't complain. We should just say, thanks for the free stuff. Thanks for the free stuff. We'll make other stuff and be on the market in that way. It's absurd for me. I think that lowering trade barriers is the way to go. This is the path that we should be going on. It'll make a prosperous life for everybody. Everybody will have cheaper products, more readily available products, and all of this stuff. Again, it's just making our life more expensive.
Yeah. It's bad enough when you subsidize something because we produce it more expensively than somebody else. I think that's criminal, right? We should buy it from somebody else. But what's really criminal is when you're subsidizing something that nobody else wants anymore, like mainstream media in this country. Like, we're subsidizing the CBC, and nobody wants the CBC. So why should we? Yeah, I don't like. You and I have talked about that. When you're libertarian, you have to take like, I don't want subsidies. I'll take my chance.
No,
it sounds cruel. I know the family farm's been in your family for 50 years, but if you can't compete against other people, then it's time to move on. It's cruel, but that's what it is.
It's not incumbent on the taxpayer to pay for that stuff, or even if it's not subsidized, be forced to buy that product because we can't buy it from another source. Now, I want to talk about that because you brought up CBC. Now,
not on purpose.
Defund the CBC has been this thing. Now, I'm hearing in the news that Pierre Poilievre isn't talking about defunding media anymore. He's talking about subsidizing media, and he's talking about subsidizing all the other medias instead of just subsidizing the
media. He's quietly walking that one back. I got to find an old tweet. I had an old tweet that said, for me, I had an old tweet that said, this is a deal breaker. Like, if he doesn't defund the CBC, that's a deal breaker for me. You promised that for 4 years, man. I want the CBC defunded. Like, sell it. It's a crown corporation. Just sell it. If you get $1 billion for it, you get $1 billion for it. And if somebody else wants to buy it, let them buy it. That's it.
My inner Italian's coming out. I'm not Italian at all, but so if he's going to subsidize the media and he gets rid of the crown corporation, makes them a private corporation, he's going back to subsidizing them. If he's talking about subsidizing the media, so if he's talking about subsidizing the media, but he makes the CBC a private business, he'll be subsidizing CBC again.
Yeah, he should
not defunding the CBC.
Yeah, it's two things: sell the CBC, sell it to a private entity, and don't subsidize whoever buys it, and don't subsidize anybody. Yeah, CTV, Chorus Radio, they don't need to be subsidized. I mean, and there's a model of businesses that are not subsidized. Our colleagues, competitors, Rebel News is not subsidized. Juno News is not subsidized. Northern Perspective, whatever. We're not subsidized. There's an alternative, and then
we're kicking their ass. To be honest,
yeah,
that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And everybody says, but then where are they going to go work? Green new jobs. Like, the people at CBC will get green new jobs. Go install solar panels, become drone operators. I don't care. Like, it's not I'm not responsible for the fact
learn how to code.
Evolution. Yeah. Like, if evolution makes your job obsolete, I'm not going to pay to keep you in that job. Can you imagine if we did that all the time? We'd still have guys trapping beaver and making beaver hats that nobody wants. Like,
well, so have you heard the buggy whip argument? So the buggy whip was this. So for the people who don't know in the audience that have never heard of this, the buggy whip was industry. People would make buggy whips with leather to whip horses on the back of a buggy to keep it going. And with the advent of the automobile, the buggy whip industry was in disarray, and they were lobbying the government saying, we need you to subsidize the buggy whip industry to keep these people working. And you know what the government said? They said, no. Get another job. This was when the government wasn't a big, your big brother, your nanny state, all of this stuff. They didn't take care of you. You were there. They were there to protect the borders and all these other things, not to protect each individual from their own life. Like, get on with it. The industry is dead. Do another job. That's what they said. And guess what? Everyone got another job. There was no heartache. There was no mass unemployment. None of it existed.
We should have the equivalent of a zoo, but instead of a zoo, I don't know what we call it. It'd be a zoo with humans, and then we keep the last of a species in there. So the last buggy whipper goes into the zoo. The last typesetter goes into the zoo. The last guy who, and folks, think about this, right? Like, we keep talking about AI. Do you have any idea how many jobs are going to become obsolete in the next 20 years because of AI? Like, you're a clerk working for the Canada Revenue Agency and you're going to get replaced by AI. Do I need to keep paying by the, you know what?
You'll need one clerk. You'll need one clerk on the floor, but it'll be one clerk that works with AI and gets everything done. This is great though. This is great because you know what people used to do? It used to be 80 people in a field picking soybeans or picking whatever, right? And then they came up with this new invention. It was called the automated mechanized, combine harvester. And it ran on dinosaur juice, and it went down and it was one guy that did it instead of 80 people. Those 80 people went off. This was the theory at the time. They called them useless eaters. They called them all of these things. And they this fear of like vagrants all over the place. They all got jobs. They all figured out new industries and new things came about, and our lives got better. This is the amazing part, is that it freed people up to do newer and better things, and everybody's life got better. This is great. This is AI is something good.
But think about the AI, like, translators working for the government of Canada are going to get replaced by AI. Teachers are going to get replaced. Designers, videographers, sound editors. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people, which is why it's a segue.
A lot of teachers do need to get replaced.
Which is why the government keeps pushing universal basic income, because millions of Canadians and people around the world are going to find themselves unemployed, and that's why year after year after year. And that's when we talked earlier, that's one of the stories that broke today. That guy there, Claude Giroux, is the parliamentary budget officer. He published a report today. And if he's publishing a report, he doesn't just go out and randomly do reports. He works for parliamentarians. Parliamentarians have been asking him to do a cost workup for universal basic income. And he worked it up. And it would be $100 billion a year for a simple universal basic income in this country.
This is absurd. This idea that, I mean, how do they implement this? So everybody gets a check, and then everybody has no incentive to go to work anymore. We saw this with COVID, with the CERB checks. People would take the check and then go work under the table, stuff like that. That's what a lot of people would do.
I'm not going to bring up my tweet, and we don't need to bring up my tweet, but I broke this story today because I went and looked at the report by the parliamentary budget officer. It's not a new report; it's an updated report. He provided the report a year ago, and a year ago he said it was going to be $50 billion. In this report, he said it's $100 billion a year, because he went from a nuclear family to what's called an economic family. So a nuclear family, they were going to provide universal basic income to a nuclear family, which means you had to be mom and dad with kids. But then anyways, but in the report.
This is communism, Marty. This is crazy.
Yeah.
That we're considering communism.
But Clyde, in the report, he literally said it's $100 billion excluding the behavioral costs. And he's very specific. They know that there's going to be a negative behavioral change that will have a huge cost on society, which is people won't work. So he's like, it's just going to cost the government $100 billion to do this. He didn't provide the behavioral cost, but he mentions it. He's like, if you give everybody $20,000, there's a lot of people who are going to stop working. And then it's going to cause all these other problems in restaurants and businesses. And by the way, if you give I hate to say this, and I'm going to get argument for this, but if you give everybody $20,000, then the first $20,000 that everybody earns is worthless.
It's the new zero.
It's the new zero.
New zero.
Yeah, you start at 20,000. You don't start at zero. You start at 20,000. So everybody, if we all get $20,000 on January 1st, and if you go buy a television on January 1st, it's $20,000.
I hate to say this though, and this sounds totally tinfoil hattish, but this is that $20,000. That will be the payola to get you to sign on to a digital ID and social what do they call it? Social
credit,
the credit system. Yeah. Like China. So if you don't want the 20 grand, that's fine, but you'll have to earn $20,000 a year just to get to zero, where everybody's zero is 20 grand.
Yeah.
And if you don't want that, then you have to go on the social media or social credit system. You have to get your digital ID, and you can't go around. I mean, they tested this out with the COVID passports. Come on, Marty. We knew what they were doing with all of that.
I think UBI is going to be a theme of the next election. I do. Somebody said like it's not going to be axe to tax. Like Poilievre 6 months ago said that the next election is going to be about the carbon tax. No, the liberals took that away from him. They already all said no, we're gonna. Wow, that was another doozy of Carney today or this week, right? Like, I'm the carbon tax not working for individuals, so we're gonna shift it over to large polluters and then he's going to make anyways. I don't want to talk. I'm tired of talking about Carney. I don't want to talk about Carney. But the next election is going to be UBI is going to be on the ballot.
Yeah, it's going to be who wants communism more. That's going to be the thing, and people are going to vote for free money. That's, I mean, for lack of a better thing. And then what are they going to do? They're going to take on giant infrastructure projects, just like China. I'm not kidding. This is crazy. This news. So Canadian federal government just announced that they're going to put $40 billion of infrastructure into this high-speed rail thing. So they're going to go in Ontario. This is the high-speed rail that nobody asked for. Maybe people asked for, but it makes no sense logistically, or there's no reason for it. Why do we need to move people around so much for in Southwestern Ontario?
We actually, that yellow line, more or less, or make it the red line. The red line. No, the yellow line, the Via Rail, the existing Via Rail corridor does exist. Via Rail is a Crown corporation. I went and looked at their annual report for 2023. The 2024 one's not out. Via Rail moved 4.1 million passengers along that corridor in 2023 and lost $500 million, $500 million. It's a Crown corporation. Via Rail, as a Crown corporation, already does this, has never made a profit, never, ever, ever, ever turned a profit. So now you're telling me that that we're going to spend 40, and if the government says they're going to spend 40, what do you think
it's going to be? It's going to be 180.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to spend $180 billion for 4 million passengers a year. What are we going to charge them to break even? Like $10,000 a trip? It's like when you do the math, it's completely. This is not Japan or China where they like. You've been to Japan, right? The high-speed rail.
High-speed rail makes sense.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Even in China, I mean, it's like you could get around without the high-speed rail was a losing project. It was a big flex. It was a big like, hey, look what we can do. They could have done it with the infrastructure that they had, just like us. We're not moving products with this. We're not moving products with a high-speed rail. The CN rail already moves products in this corridor. It's all the same. Now, I added to this. I said, I suppose a mega dam on St. Lawrence will be the next displacing all of Southwestern Ontario. I mean, if you're going to copy the Chinese ridiculous infrastructure projects, why not go all out? Why not just flood the whole place with a dam and try to make whatever out of it?
And and there's an existing rail system in Quebec, and I've taken it. I should have brought it out. I have my rail pass from years ago. And you know why the rail system in Quebec is slow all the time? Because of the freight cars full of oil that are going one way. So if you built a pipeline and you shipped oil by pipeline instead of by rail, then maybe the trains carrying passengers could be more efficient. I don't know, just an idea. Like the liberals solve problems by by spending money.
Well, it's a vote buying scheme is what it is. There's a lot of bleeding heart liberal types in southwestern Ontario, big voter block that they're starting to lose demographics for,
who
that have been crying for high-speed rail forever, and just they can't make it because it doesn't make sense.
No, and it's been studied for years and years. And who gets paid to study this problem year after year? SNC-Lavalin. Like, it's just like when you see that, when you dive into it, you go like, okay, how much? Like this one is so ridiculous. In fact, it's so ridiculous because it's a project that's been studied for years. A few bucks get thrown at it once in a while, and then the fact that it came out this week as a campaign promise from a prime minister who's pro-rogue parliament, who's out in Paris doing whatever, decides, hey, let's distract Canadians and let's throw that out there. I mean, this was a distraction because buried in the news this week was inflation. Like, nobody talked about inflation. The inflation numbers for January came out. And guess what, Clyde?
They're up.
They're up.
Could have told you that.
Way back up.
Could have told we've been talking about this. Oh, wait, you're gonna drop the interest rates again? Well, guess what? You're printing money to do that, and it's only a matter of time before the prices start going up again.
It's instantly noticeable, and they're trying to explain it with all sorts of weird twists. It's like, no, folks, you're printing money.
This is even with their flub numbers, by the way.
Yeah. People are you're making it's supply and demand. So you can affect the supply by giving, if the supply is going up and there's too much of it and people can't afford it, you can change the demand by giving people money. And so if you give people money, you increase the demand for something. So cheap interest rate is giving people money. And when there's cheap interest rates, people went, oh, okay, my mortgage payments are back to sort of normal. So now I'm going to go buy a big TV and pay more than I should for my big TV, and inflation goes back up. It's just like that. Just like that.
And it's funny because, like, you know, they don't want to talk about this, but they'll spin other things bad. So the bad dollar, now they're spinning that instead of addressing the dollar or addressing inflation. They're now using this as a tactic to go against the United States again and saying Canadians are not going to America because they're boycotting America and they're not going on their vacations to the US. It's like, no, Canadians can't afford to go to the US. Not only the dollar, but they have less of them.
Ron DeSantis made fun of that today because a bunch of Canadians said, oh, we're not going to Florida. He's like, no, you're not. You're coming. You live in Montreal. You say this every 3 years. You say, yeah, we're not going to Florida. We're going to protest. But no, it's -20 in Montreal. By the way, did you see Montreal? They got hit by a snowstorm so big that the city of Montreal is going to take 8 days to dig out of this snowstorm. Like, it's just, yeah. And Ron DeSantis, he knows that. He's like, no, you're not. You're coming down. We'll welcome you back. We don't care that you booed us. That's fine. Your orange juice is ready. Your condo's all sitting there. You're welcome back to Florida. Like, a million Quebecers go to Florida every year.
Well, don't fly Delta, I guess.
Oh, yeah. That was a rough landing, man. Oh, they're lucky. That was a rough landing.
It was a really bad one. I mean, I'm at the risk of losing the video for this because don't
talk about it. We don't want to be demonetized, but yeah.
Yeah, so this was a really bad landing. I'll pause it just before the explosion, just because of how it is with YouTube here. As it came down, you can see the landing gear was down, but it hit hard and the landing gear collapsed. Now, after making the video, I had a lot of pilots reach out to me and tell me that the aircraft didn't flare. It's a term that they use just before you land. Because in the video I mentioned, like, yeah, they're coming down super hard. It looked as if they weren't trying to pull up or what. I didn't know the terminology, right? Like, slow down their descent. And yeah, that's what people are saying, that it turns out that they didn't flare. And speaking of flare, I mean, this is their thing. They've been showcasing the fact that Delta Airlines is, what was it? Like the DEI.
This is stuff. A subsidiary. This is Delta Airline plane flown by a subsidiary of Delta Airlines.
Oh, okay. So maybe
yeah.
it didn't fall under the DEI stuff. And that was the question. So everybody was talking about who was the pilot. Why did this crash? Can we find out anything about the pilot? And they were every article seemed very secretive about anything to do with the crew on board, and didn't want to talk about that, but just talked about the conditions, things like that.
To me, that accident, I've flown a lot. Like I accumulate 100,000 miles a year flying, and flaring is like the flaps come out and you slowly stall the plane, you lift the nose and so forth. And they do that at the very last second. It's crazy how they come in and then they do it at the last second. What that looks like to me on that accident is pilots fly in what's called height above the ground. Like their instruments are set to an elevation above sea level. So sea level is 0, but when you're in a place like Toronto, you might be at 100 feet above sea level or 150, right? So when they're coming in for a landing, they adjust this little knob, and because the airport calls out and says, our elevation is 150 feet above sea level. So they adjust everything. You know what I mean? So to me, it looks like somebody, like the plane thought that the ground was at 140 feet and hadn't started flaring, and all of a sudden, oh shit, there's the ground, right? To me, it looks like somebody entered a wrong digit in their little computer at the last second coming in for a landing. Now the pilot hopefully would see that, because he's flying it, but he's also looking at instruments. But then if the runway is white and there's a little bit of fog, I don't know. Looks like human error to me on that one, but we'll see.
It looks
Luckily,
like human
everybody walked
error.
away.
Well, it looks like human error, and the term that apparently Delta had been using was for this DEI project. They wanted to have unmanned aircraft
in the back, not in the plane, and not in the front, but in the back.
The whole plane. This was their thing. They wanted to have unmanned aircraft where everybody on the plane who was part of the operations were not men. They were all women. This was
that sense. Okay, Jesus.
Yeah. So this is where a lot of people are calling into question. So I don't care. I don't discriminate against, women can be all of these things. That's great if they're qualified. Now, but the DEI thing always calls into question, are we hiring the most qualified people? Is this what's actually happening? So I don't know if you caught it, but a number of months ago, it was Ted Cruz was grilling Obama's pick for is it the FAA, the regulatory body,
Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. Yeah.
So this was the scene at this.
Thank you for the question, Senator. No, I have never flown a plane.
So you weren't a military pilot or a commercial airline pilot?
No, Senator.
Have you ever worked for an airline?
No, Senator.
Have you ever worked as an air traffic controller?
No, Senator.
You ever worked for a company that manufactures airplanes?
No, Senator.
You ever worked for a company that fixes airplanes?
No, Senator.
FAA administrator is a specialized position. I'm not qualified to be FAA administrator. I have no idea how to fly a plane. No one in their right mind would put me in charge of aviation safety because I don't have that experience. I suspect most of the members of this committee are in a similar position. The American people, when they think about aviation safety, when they think about, I played in this committee, a Southwest Airlines and FedEx plane almost colliding at Austin's airport. They want an FAA administrator who knows why those planes crash and knows how to fix it to keep them safe. And with all respect, Mr. Washington, it gives no comfort to the flying public that their pilot might be a transgendered witch, but doesn't actually know how to prevent the plane from crashing into the ground and killing them. I believe your record is...
It's crazy. It's crazy, but this is where we're at.
I want my chief medical officer to have and my minister of health to have a background in that. I want my minister of agriculture to have a background in that. I want my transportation minister to have a background in that. Is that too much to ask? It's like, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, We're running out of time. I wanted to we don't even we're not even scratching the surface today. I mean,
No.
other stories that happened today. Today, Canada announced that they're streamlining it's along these lines. We're running out of soldiers and we're lowering the standards. And they announced it again. They're lowering the standards. And now they're opening the standards. They're opening the Canadian military to temporary foreign people, to landed immigrants.
Right, because that's great.
Yeah, conflict. Like I've said, I mean, people who don't even live here are going to be in our military. Did you see how much shit I got this week online for posting the picture of the Canadian soldiers singing the anthem with the blue nail polish? And
No, I
everybody says
didn't
that's a
see
fake
that.
doctored picture. It's not fake, folks. It's not fake. The guy who sings the national anthem routinely in Montreal has blue nail polish and he's in the army.
Oh man. Yeah, dress code. Come on.
We've lowered the dress code. We've made it, I want my long hair and I want my tattoos and I want my blue nail polish. And I'm like, an army is not a gathering, is not a group of individuals. There's no diversity as our strength in the army. You want this very uniform way of thinking, but we're getting sidetracked. It's because
I'm thinking of a quote. I'm thinking of a
these
quote
woke
right now.
ideologies have infiltrated everything. Yes, the FAA
there's a
director has no idea. Yeah.
There's a great quote for this, and it was Niccolo Machiavelli. He said, "The Florentines were easily conquered because they had become weak and effeminate from long peace." And it sounds like that's where we are. This is out of actually Jeffrey Rath's Substack, and I tweeted that out because I was like, "Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing," because I mean, the parallels are just so huge. But save from
the long piece is a problem. Yeah.
To save from eating up all our time and bring up some other stories. One big one to hit the news today was Pat King. Pat King was sentenced.
Yes.
So Pat King, for those who don't know who he is, he was involved in the Freedom Convoy back in 2022. And he was one of the main people who were all over the news. He was all over the U.S. news. He wasn't part of the same group as Tamara Leitch and Chris Barber, but there were several groups in this whole thing. It was an organic thing that took place, and he was a prominent figure at the convoy, and he was sentenced to 3 months in conditional sentence. That's what he got. So basically no time served, no jail, none of that stuff.
Actually, that story is a little misleading. He was sentenced to 12 months, but because he was granted 9 months of served equivalency, and so then the judge said your remaining is 3 months to be served in a house sentence. So
3 months house arrest.
House arrest for the remainder is all he's left with, which is.
My comment on this was the sentence was really 3 years of lawfare.
Totally.
And that's what it really comes down to. This whole idea of a speedy trial in Canada is out to lunch anymore. There is you
mentioned Chris and Tamara. They're waiting for their trial. They're waiting for their sentencing. It's not until April.
We don't even know if they're going to be held guilty.
Shit, yeah, they're waiting for their guilty. Yeah, they're waiting for
their verdict.
Their verdict. Never mind their sentencing. Yeah.
And it's over 3 years, right? Yeah. This is crazy. And their life's on hold. They can't get a job. They can't do this. They can't leave the country. They can't go travel. They can't live their lives. They've lost a lot of their liberties. Oh, they can travel, but they're under restrictions. A lot of their liberties are gone. And this is the lawfare that we're talking about. That is a huge sentence, and they haven't even been convicted of a crime. What happened to speedy sentence? What happened to a speedy trial? All of these things that we held up in high esteem, they don't exist anymore for us.
They no, and for us, we get dragged through these long processes, and for the real criminals like Justin Trudeau, there'll never be a trial. I mean, somebody's trying, like right now, we spoke earlier of SNC Lavalin. The SNC Lavalin case, the controversy over that 3 years ago, these guys are just trying to launch a lawsuit against the Liberals now, but it'll never happen. Actually, I was surprised. I was honestly surprised that actually we didn't talk about this last week. Oh, we didn't. Maybe we'll talk about this in the chat afterwards when the prorogation trial was on Thursday, Friday, or hearings were on Thursday, Friday. They didn't go good for the parliament or for the government. So,
oh yeah. So for everybody
yeah.
who's watching right now, if you're watching this on Thursday morning or after the fact, you got to catch the live show, because we do a whole like hour of Q&A after this chat. And it's only available if you're live, if you're there live. If you want to watch it after the fact, you got to be a member of the channel. You can just join in as a member, and you can watch those at your leisure. But if you want to catch it without the membership, you have to catch it live on Wednesday evenings. It starts at 6:30 Pacific time. That's 9:30 Eastern. But getting into this story, so this is Democracy Watch, who's been following this SNC-Lavalin story very closely, and I've been following them and the work that they've been doing. Now, like, they were the ones who broke the case. They said that the RCMP had finalized the case, or some discrepancy where they said that the case was reopened, and they just didn't want to divulge the information. This was an interesting one. So Freedom of Information request was made by Democracy Watch. They filed the Freedom of Information request. They got back a redacted statement from the RCMP, and the RCMP said, well, it's an open investigation. So they published an article saying the investigation is still open on SNC-Lavalin. And then the RCMP said, no, it's not. It's closed. And they said, well, you don't have a right to redact this then. And so they were trying to have their cake and eat it too in this whole thing. Democracy Watch has lost patience, and they're now deciding that they're going to file criminal charges against Trudeau, but in an interesting way. Have a listen.
Given the evidence, and given as well that the RCMP did not apply the correct legal standard in terms of reviewing the evidence and determining whether there had been an obstruction of justice, and also given that the RCMP did not consider in its investigation whether the Prime Minister or anyone else had committed a breach of trust, Democracy Watch is today filing an application in Ontario Court of Justice for court approval to pursue a private prosecution of these allegations of obstruction of justice and breach of trust. Given the evidence,
so it's a different way of going about it. It's a citizen trial. I don't know how this is going to work.
Yeah, but I mean, it's basically just as a reminder for folks, like this. There was evidence that SNC was doing bad stuff, right? SNC was working for the government, spending money in Libya and places like that, and it was all corrupt. People were investigating it, and then the Trudeau's own office said you got to block these investigations. That's what happened, and because Trudeau is getting paid lots of money from SNC. I mean, it's a Quebec engineering firm. Anyways, it was all corrupt. And then Trudeau literally put pressure on his own attorney general, which at the time was Jody Wilson-Raybould, saying, like, make this go away. And she wouldn't make this go away. And so he fired her. And
brought in Lametti, and then Lametti was like happy to just drop it. That was the crazy
and then
part.
She wrote about this in the book. So this is a story that's not going away. So these guys, kudos to them. They're doing what, unfortunately, we're at the point where private citizens have to do what the RCMP should be doing, because what the RCMP is not doing their job. The attorney general tried to do her job, but Trudeau fired her. So, like, yeah, the country's broken, man. The systems don't work. And then our last resort is groups like this trying to bring private lawsuits against the government, which are very costly. So, but we're winning. I mean, we're winning. Yeah, absolutely.
My only thing is, I hope this doesn't turn into some just like a symbolic gesture, because, well, like we've got enough symbolic gestures.
We got enough symbolic gestures, but there's always something good that comes out of these things. One of the things that I like that comes out of these things, even if we lose, is the disclosure phase, right? So these guys, like, the government might win in the court, but they're going to lose in the court of public opinion. So when they launch a court finding a battle like this, they're going to hit the government with like, we want this evidence. We want to see the phone calls between Trudeau and SNC. We want to see the phone calls between, you know what I mean? Like, and sure, it'll all be redacted, but at least you can just, I mean, if the government gives you a stack of papers that's like 6 inches thick and it's all redacted, you know it's bad, right? So I'm just happy when we get those papers. Same with the trial that happened last week on Thursday, Friday. Like the government looked like clowns in defending. Will we win? Will the prorogation get overturned? Probably not. But the government looked like clowns. They look like absolute clowns trying to justify this. I mean, Northern Perspective did a great job on reporting on this, like how the mental gymnastics that the government lawyers were doing, like, we're the government, we can do anything we want. Like that was their argument. Like,
that was their argument. At this point, I don't think they care much because why care? Marty, where can people find you?
Marty Up North on Twitter for sure, and I still have a little bit of Marty Up North on YouTube. So I've asked last week, I'll ask one last time, if a few people can go to Marty Up North on YouTube and hit that like button and subscribe. I think I'm 100 away from 25,000. If I get to 25,000 viewers, I'll be happy, really happy.
Links in the description down below.